There's been a lot of buzz surrounding rFactor2 lately, especially with their online service launch, but what there is almost no buzz about is their oval racing. That's right, rFactor2 has NASCARs and oval tracks in it, but almost nobody talks about it because iRacing pretty much has a monopoly in that space. So today I wanted to try out rFactor2's oval racing for the first time, especially testing out its physics and comparing it to iRacing. So I'll give my honest opinion on how oval cars drive in rFactor2 and compare with iRacing. You might call me biased, but there are cars in iRacing that I both like and don't like, so I know which physics and which feelings are what I personally enjoy to drive. So let's get right to it. All right, I think we're in. This took me like an hour to set up all my controls. Like, maybe I'm dumb, but I think that rFactor just does not like when I have a Logitech wheel and Fanatec pedals. It just really didn't like it. So I'm at Indianapolis in the fake Xfinity rFactor car. This is an official car by them, so this is going to be a good way to measure, because in iRacing we just ran there in Xfinity, so I have a pretty good idea. I've turned quite a few laps in this combo. When I was setting up controls, I put AI in the same session as me, and when I was watching them, they didn't know how to make it through the lap without crashing and burning on fire. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to be alone for this. That would have been pretty entertaining though. Okay, so my iRacing idea of Indy is I need to go about here, get on the brakes to a trail, bring it to the bottom. I mean, that felt pretty much what I expected it to feel like. Missed the corner a little bit. Seems like it's a little more in the track than iRacing. Like, the amount of throttle and wheel that I put in that corner, I would expect in iRacing I was going to start sliding, but I never started sliding. So let's see. This is our first corner at speed. I'll attack it like I do Xfinity. Okay. That's mostly what I kind of felt like it should be. Okay. Whoa. That was a snap that came out of nowhere. I'm kind of just gliding now. Oh, I hope I don't hit the wall. Okay, let's just get going again. That I did not even begin to feel that slide coming, which was very odd. Because at first it kind of felt like it was in the track. It was like gripping more than iRacing would have. Oh, I have a vibration. I think I flat spotted a tire. Oh, that's interesting to feel flat spotting a tire. I've never felt flat spotting a tire in oval before. My wheel is just vibrating. That's pretty cool, actually. That's not something I expected to feel, but yeah, my wheel is not feeling very good right now. Hear that? Yeah, the slides in rFactor are just so much different than iRacing. But, like, what it's handling like in the corners themselves, it feels like iRacing on a tight setup. It reminds me a bit of the old or the newer Gen 6 car. The one thing that I'm noticing more about rFactor2 in general than iRacing is how much more rFactor is either you have grip or you don't have grip. It seems like I can really turn the wheel a lot more, but once I overstep a bound in rFactor2, the car is just gone. And I don't really tend to get rotation from the throttle or the brake. Whereas in iRacing, a lot more of that rotation comes from the throttle and the brake than it does the steering wheel. It seems like for the most part, and maybe it's just the setup, but in this car at Indianapolis, I'm getting almost no rotation from either of my pedals, and that's leaving most of the work having to be done with the steering wheel. I can start to hear the tire a little bit. I still have the engine sound a little bit too loud, but I have the engine sound really low and the tire sound really high, and it still sounds like that. Okay, regrettably, I gave Motorsports Games money and bought Worldwide Technology Raceway, aka Gateway, because this is going to be where we really see how the car handles. I really like Gateway, especially in the Xfinity car, so let's go check it out, and I will see you there. So what I'm looking for at Gateway is just seeing how the car handles braking. The thing about rFactor2 that might make it tough for me is that I didn't calibrate the brakes. I wasn't able to calibrate the brakes to how I liked them. I like it really soft and not using much of the range, but I couldn't go above a certain sensitivity here, so I'm gonna have to press a lot harder than I'm used to pressing. So we'll see if there's anything having to do with shifting here. It's a lot more wheel than I'm used to inputting. I put it on 14 to 1. On iRacing, I wouldn't have turned nearly that much for 14 to 1. Now let's see where we're going here. Let's brake a little early, just in case. Oh, that was probably the right idea. Man, you just can't pick up the throttle to get rotation. That's what I'm noticing throughout everything. There's no such thing as kind of kicking out the rear a little bit, getting on the throttle and using that for rotation. There I finally kicked out the rear under braking, but it didn't like slide like I wanted it to. And how was that almost as fast? That's really weird. It went back to being gripped up after being over the edge for a little bit. It didn't come back to that like equilibrium. Looking back on these laps, one thing I'm noticing really interesting is I actually look to be turning the wheel more in iRacing when it felt like I was turning more in rFactor. That might be a wheel calibration issue for me, but what I felt like I was getting on the edge of grip on rFactor anyways, so it's not like I could have turned the wheel more or else I would have lost the rear tire. But what's really interesting is that in iRacing, that never really happens. When you turn the wheel too much, you almost just lock up. You don't really ever lose the rear unless you're already loose to begin with. rFactor, you can initiate loose by turning the wheel, which is just odd to me. So there were a couple pros and a couple cons for rFactor2 after driving that. Overall, I really enjoyed the feeling of the car in terms of the wheel. Flat spawning the tire and really feeling the vibrations was a cool sensation that I did not expect at all, and I could definitely feel the force feedback and the bumps in the track a lot more in rFactor than I would at the same track in iRacing. But when it comes to the actual cornering physics, there was something about rFactor2 that just did not feel as enjoyable to me. It was like turning the car with only the steering wheel, and the pedals was just a means to get your car to a certain speed. Whereas in iRacing, I feel like I turn the car more with the pedals than the steering wheel, and that to me is a lot more fun. But besides that, there were no absolute staggering differences that made me feel like I was just driving a completely different type of car. It did really just feel like I was driving the same car, but just on different setups, one that I just happened to like more than the other. So now I'm going to try out both of the official Cup cars that rFactor2 does and compare them with their iRacing counterparts and do a little side-by-side with commentary for you guys. Okay, this one's kind of wild. This is the Gen 6 before the low horsepower, so high horsepower Gen 6. And the rFactor2 is just so much more gripped up, but this is also the most fun car that I tried today. Like, it didn't feel completely engaged in the same way that Xfinity was, but you can just see the difference with how much more grip the rFactor2 in similar conditions gets. You can see that it's like going to be 3 seconds, which is absolutely insane. And even with the 3 seconds, the rFactor2 still felt like it was more fun to drive and less controllable than the Xfinity. Alright, this is the later Gen 6 car, so high downforce, but take a look at my wheel action in iRacing compared to rFactor2. rFactor2, I'm completely smooth on the wheel. There's no real reason to be wheeling the car at all. iRacing, I'm on edge the entire time, including the freaking straightaway. And that's just more fun for me. Who knows what's more realistic, but going through the corner here, you can definitely see, look at the smoothness difference. And this is just me trying to get the best lap time in each. This is how I naturally responded to trying to push for the best lap. So the big question everyone wants answered is rFactor2's oval physics more fun than iRacing's? Personally, I think mostly no. I think that the actual racing part of rFactor2 is not quite as enjoyable as iRacing getting through the corners. The only thing that I would consider more fun about rFactor2 is the force feedback, which is kind of ironic because in iRacing, a lot of people don't really use the force feedback for ovals in the first place. But that's more of a gamer thing than a realism thing. I do think that skills gained on ovals on iRacing and rFactor2 are pretty transferable from one to the other though. It really teaches the same thing about patience to get back on the throttle, just with different ways of punishing you. But other than that, I'll probably stick on iRacing for the time being. So, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.